Hi guys, and welcome back to another story, another true crime story with me, Normandi. As promised in my previous video, today we are back in South Africa, putting the spotlight on another South African case. Although this is one of the very few cases that we actually have a surviving victim that is still alive to tell the story. Before we go any further, I'd really like to ask you to please like and subscribe to my channel as it helps me get my story out. This was a true love story, a fairy tale. A single mother finally thought that she found her knight in shining armor. Everything was perfect until the day that she got married. That night, in the honeymoon suite, everything changed. Now, a striking piece of evidence that was found at the crime scene when police arrived was a picture of a newlywed couple with the following writing on the back: "Love is like a war, easy to start, difficult to end, and impossible to forget." Let's start with Johan. Johannes Christian Kotze was born in 1961 in Namibia. He was born out of wedlock, and in the 1960s that was heavily frowned upon. So shortly after his birth, his mother abandoned him, and eventually he was adopted by his neighbor. And sadly, only a few months after this adoption, the neighbor also passed away, and eventually Christian, or Johan, was given to his biological father and lived with him from there. Shortly after Johan was given back to his father remarried again, and the couple have two daughters. Now, Johan got along really great with his stepsisters, but his stepsister said that he always had problems in school. He was always bullied and called names right throughout his life. Bonnet, the surviving victim, was born in Rustenburg in 1969. She grew up as a farm girl with her two brothers, and Ina always had this dream of moving to Johannesburg, known as the City of Gold. She really wanted to become a secretary and working in the city to get away from this farm. This dream eventually did come true, and Ina started working at Home Affairs in Johannesburg. But not long after she started, Ina quit her job and then moved back to Rustenburg, realizing that that wasn't something that she wanted to do for the rest. At the age of 21, Ina married her first husband. The couple had two children together, an older boy they named Conrad, and then a younger sister they named Angelique. After a couple of years, the marriage did fail and they got divorced. The children did stay with Ina, but they saw their father frequently. She was now a successful woman in the insurance industry, and she raised her kids on her own. Then one night in August 2009, Ina received a call from a man saying that he got her number from a friend of hers, and he really wanted to get to know her a little bit better. Ina felt unsure about this, and she told him that she'd think about it, but only a couple of nights later, the man phoned again, asking her if she did think about it. And eventually she started chatting to this man, and this continued on every night. They talk until late into the midnight hours, and so this relationship started. The two eventually did meet in a public space. Ina insisted that it be in a public area, as you think many people would do when you meet somebody from the internet. And obviously one made a great first impression, because after that they'd spend every weekend together. Johan would make the 6-hour drive from where he lived to Modimolle, where Ina lived, and they'd spend weekends together and also visiting her friends quite often, and eventually her friends also became quite fond of Johan. On the 23rd of October 2010, the couple got married. Ina said it was a beautiful wedding, everything that she'd expected. Her friends, family, and their children were there to celebrate the day with them. Ina said that it finally felt like she started this new chapter in her life, and she was very excited to start her life with her new husband. Now that night they went into their honeymoon suite. Everything that Ina had known about Johan before they got married, this idyllic life that she thought she was going to have, changed in an instant. Johan asked her to come and sit with him on the bed, and he told her that in order for their marriage to be successful, she would have to follow a couple of rules. Now these rules included that Ina's parents was they were no longer able to come and visit her without his permission. Her children couldn't ask her for anything anymore. They had to get any and all permission from him. She was only allowed to wear her hair a certain type, a certain style, that he would tell her how to cut her hair, how she was allowed to dress, and that she would have to be back before 5 p.m. on any given day. She can't come home later than 5 p.m. at night. And also she had to give him a schedule of her everyday routine, the clients that she was going to see, everything she had to report to him throughout the day. According to Ina, the best day of her 10-day honeymoon was the day she got to come home. She said she felt smothered the whole time and she had to pretend that she was happy while inside her heart was breaking. She came home a week before her actual leave ended, the leave that she's taken from work. But during that time, she had to make arrangements for her son to start university soon. Ina's son Conrad started studying at the university early in February of 2011, but Ina said that things at home wasn't going well at all. Johan humiliated her, belittled her. He was being a horrible person at home, and she said that she tried to make this marriage work for 5 months, but after 5 months she just realized that she really couldn't do this anymore. Then at the end of July 2011, Johan Kotze finally told her that she was allowed to go and visit her parents. She was very excited about this and immediately phoned her son and asked him to get a lift so that they can go and visit his grandparents. She got her children and they spent a wonderful weekend away with her family, and of course they had to be home at 5 p.m. that Sunday evening. She probably knew that there was an argument coming, so she told her daughter Angelique to go and lock herself in her bedroom. And as luck would have it, Johan came back into the house and started knocking on Angelique's door, shouting and yelling at her to come out. Ina then walked up to Johan and told him how he wrecked her life totally, how she was miserable since the day that they got married. Her daughter finally joined her in the hallway to come and stand by her during this conversation with Johan. And during this time, Johan continued belittling her family, calling them names. And in a moment of anger, Ina just shoved him and, well, she basically hit him with a fist, but only that one time. So after Ina had a breakdown and hit him, Kotze got into his car and he drove off. She didn't know where he was going, only to later find out that he immediately went to the nearest police station and opened a case of assault against Ina. That Monday morning, Ina cancelled all of the appointments that she had. She started house hunting or home hunting, and by that afternoon, Ina had a key for a flat in her hands, and she and her daughter would stay in this place whether it was empty. She had no furniture, nothing, but she felt happy that she could finally escape this man. But her nightmare only continued, as for the next 6 months, Johan would continue stalking her every day. He knew about everything she did, what she would do throughout the day. He stalked her for those 6 months. On the 17th of November 2011, Ina was busy in her garden when suddenly she heard Kotze talking behind her. Now keep in mind that this man had an interdict against her, which means that they can't be within a certain proximity of each other. But he just ignored it. He walked into her flat and said he was just there to inform her that the house he was currently staying in would become very well known in the area and that the person closest to her would hurt her the most. Then at the beginning of 2012, Ina was at work. This was on the 3rd of January. She was starting and planning a year ahead and sorting things out at her office when she received a phone call from Kotze saying that they really had to speak to sort things out. I assume this had to do with divorce matters and who gets what and all of those proceedings. And she said that no, she had a really busy schedule ahead of her, but he can come and see her at the office. He refused this and said that no, it's way too private to speak to her about this in front of other people. So Ina said that okay, she would meet him later that afternoon after she completed everything she had to do for the morning. That afternoon when Ina arrived at his house, everything was calm. He came out and greeted her with a very friendly demeanor. He even asked her if she wanted to sit inside or outside and if she wanted to have a drink. She said it was really hot that day, so she told him she wanted to sit outside, and he bought her a glass of water as she was sitting outside. The two of them had an odd conversation, something that he'd never really be interested in, and Ina felt like he only wanted information from her. He asked her how her family was doing, her son, her daughter, parents, and then he asked her where all of them were. And then finally he came to the point of asking her if she didn't want to give their marriage another chance. And without thinking a moment, Ina of course said no. She didn't want to do it, as she couldn't live with all of his rules and him belittling her and controlling her in the way that he did. He then said if that's the way that she felt and that was the case, that she should get a lawyer and they should set up a list with everything that he owes her. And when she has that in place, they should contact his lawyer so they could finalize everything and get the divorce finalized. Now, after the conversation, just as Ina was about to leave, Kotze told her that there was still a box of her belongings inside the house. So he led her into the house. Ina said as she walked into the house, she could see a table to her right with a towel and some change on top of the towel. The house had wooden floors. She heard him pick the towel up and the coins fell to the floor, but she didn't think anything of it at that point. He told her that the box was in the other room at the end of the house and that she should continue walking straight in front of him. She walked into the room. It was really dark in the room and she switched on the light. At the moment that Ina switched on the light, Johan threw the towel over her head and pulled her closer towards him. She started shouting and kicking, trying to get away from him, but he wouldn't move as he was much, much bigger than she was. He threw her onto the bed and pinned her onto the bed, and Ina said it was at that point that she saw 3 black men coming into the room as well. All of them had pantyhose over their heads, so you couldn't recognize any of them. She tried to shout, but out of fear she couldn't really make a sound, as Kotze ordered the men to tie her down, and there was already ropes on the burglar bars of the windows and the headboard, so it was pre-planned, everything was already there. He then also told one of the men to put some masking tape over her mouth so she couldn't shout anymore, and it wasn't just a little piece of masking tape that they put on her mouth, they actually rolled the tape around her head, so she was totally covered in masking tape, and she could barely breathe with all of this tape around her head. Kotze then ordered one of the men, he named Hendrik, but it's not clear which one of the suspects it was. He ordered him to start taking off Ina's clothes, and in that moment the man that she loved started hurting her and cutting her with side cutters and other tools, and he ordered the 3 men to go ahead and rape Ina. After this whole ordeal, Kotze got hold of Ina's phone and called her son Conrad at university and somehow convinced him to come over to the house. Now, he showed up with his friend Marinus on a motorcycle, but Kotze didn't expect this friend to come with him. So as they came into the yard, Kotze sent Marinus to go and fetch something in the garage while he took Conrad into the house. Ina said while lying on the bed she heard the motorbike pulling up to the house, and she knew it was Conrad that was there. Then moments later she heard her son asking, "No, please don't," and she heard a gunshot. And then again she heard him asking, "No, please don't," and then she heard another 2 shots fired. Kotze and Ina had 2 mutual friends, Dirk and Vivian, a married couple. Dirk was out in town that day having new tires fitted onto his car, and he said as the car was on the lift to get the tires fitted onto the car, he received a call from Johan saying that he wasn't going fishing with him the next day anymore. They had plans to go fishing that next day, and he wouldn't go fishing anymore, and that he was leaving town, and that he wasn't going to be a burden on anybody anymore, and nobody had to worry about him anymore. Dirk found this call very strange and suspicious, so he phoned his wife Vivian to go and see what was going on at Kotze's house, because he couldn't get his car from the lift. His car was without tires, so he told her to go and have a look at what was going on at the house. So when Vivian arrived at the house, she found Marina sitting outside playing with a cat, and she asked where the people were, and he said that he wasn't sure where they were. He just saw the man sped away in his white car moments earlier. And Vivian then decided to stay and wait with Marinus and not going into the house. I don't know why they wouldn't go into the house to go and see where everybody else was, but they then decided to stay and wait for them to come out. Later, the boy said he really needed to use the bathroom, and Vivian told him to go into the house to go and use the bathroom. He then came out and told her that he heard noises from one of the bedrooms and he thought somebody was in there. At that point only, Vivian went in, and as they entered the bedroom, she found Ina lying on the bed, tied with cable ties and ropes. And she was naked as well, so she helped her and cut her loose. Ina then jumped up and tried to put on some clothing to make herself more presentable, and immediately ran into the next room where she heard the gunshots, and she found her son Conrad lying dead on the floor. She told Vivian and Marinus that they all had to get out of that house because if Kotze would arrive at that point in time, he would definitely kill all of them. So she had to leave her son lying there on the floor, knowing that he's dead and she couldn't do anything for him. They all left, but Johan was long gone by that time, as well as police couldn't find him anywhere. The next day, Ina had to go into the police station to go and make a statement. She said that she almost died of pain while making that statement. She had to go and live this whole ordeal again that happened to her the previous day, had to relive every moment as she gave this statement to the police. While giving the statement, the pain was so severe that after giving the statement, Ina went directly to the hospital where she had to undergo a couple of emergency operations. And she said it was while she was in hospital that she decided that she wasn't going to feel embarrassed about what happened to her, and she wasn't going to let this man break her. She was going to stand up and fight for what was right for her son and to get some sort of justice. About 7 days after the murder, Johan was spotted outside of a little convenience store in Modimolle in Nailstrom. He was spotted outside this little convenience store and he noticed that somebody saw him. So he jumped into his car and drove away. And he took a little road not far from town, about 2 kilometers from town. And he drove over some bushes where his car got stuck. He then got out of the car and then ran. Police arrived quickly and the helicopter was used to hover overhead the area where he was just running from or went missing. And eventually they did find the spot where he was staying in his car for a couple of days, but Kotze was nowhere to be seen. Dirk, the mutual friend of Ina and Johan, was working from home when suddenly Kotze showed up at his home, full of scrapes and bruises, and he was really dirty. Dirk then offered him coffee and told him to sit down, and he pretended that he was going to go and make the coffee, but he actually phoned the police during that time. And shortly after that, the police showed up at his house and finally picked him up there and arrested him. Between the 10th of January and the 15th of January, the other 3 suspects were also found. They were Sitole, Mutlatla, and Mupaka. That's their surnames. I'm not really sure about their names, but the police found them as well, and they also went to the holding cells awaiting their trial. Kotze and his 3 sidekicks went to court facing 17 different charges, including murder, attempted murder, and sexual assault. Advocate Bernard Bainkies, he was the representative of Johan Kotze, insisted that his client go for psychiatric evaluation at a nearby hospital, Westkoppies, where he would then be evaluated to see if he was fit to stand trial. But psychiatrists at Westkoppies found that Kotze knew exactly what he was doing during the attack and that he was perfectly capable of knowing right from wrong, and they suggested that the trial go ahead. The trial started on the 19th of November 2012, and on the 19th, Marinus was on the stand first. That was the friend of Conrad that came with him to the house, and Ina took to the stand on the 20th of November. And she said that Advocate Bainkies questioned her to such an extent that she eventually thought she deserved everything that happened to her. Kotze never accepted any responsibility for what he has done to Ina and said he was the victim. He was really the victim of his love for Ina. The other 3 victims at that point, all of them, they blamed Kotze, saying that he got them involved in a crime that they never wanted anything to do with. But the judge bluntly stated that he didn't believe anything that they had to say. Johan Kotze and Sitole was found guilty of the murder of Conrad. while the other two suspects were found guilty of sexual assault and assault with the intent to cause grievous bodily harm. Then finally, on the 16th of July 2013, it was time for the sentencing hearing, and both Johan Kotze and Sitole received life in prison for the murder of Conrad, and the other two suspects both received 15 years each for the sexual assault. And that's it for the case of the Modimolle monster, Johan Kotze. For more crimes from South Africa, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.